Hello, Tech fans, and welcome into episode 155 of the Tech Sideline podcast, originating from TSL's High Tech Studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. On today's show, we will talk about the 4-5 Virginia Tech Hokies hosting number 3 Clemson for a 7:30 kickoff inside of Lane Stadium. What do the Hokies need to do to pull off the upset against the Tigers? Episode 155 of the Tech Sideline podcast gets started right now. Whether you are watching live or archived on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or on Stitcher, so glad that you could join us today as we record on Thursday afternoon, December 3rd. Our crew today, we have our managing editor, Chris Coleman, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, the best podcast producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart, behind the scenes, and I am your podcast host, Evan Hughes. Again, it's great to have all of you with us. A reminder, if you are watching live on YouTube, please hit the like and the subscribe button. You can also do that if you're watching archived. And if you have a question for Will or Chris, football or basketball related, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we will get to those at the end of the show. Campus Emporium is proud to sponsor the TSL community. A portion of every sale is returned to Virginia Tech in support of its endowment for excellence, student programming, and need-based scholarships. We have been serving the Virginia Tech community for over 25 years from our locations in Blacksburg and our online store. Please visit the #1 source for Virginia Tech merchandise at campusemporium.com or come see us at 207 North Main Street or 1337 South Main Street. Tech Sideline Podcast also brought to you by the Southeast Regional Training Center. Go to southeastrtc.com to find different ways of how you can support Virginia Tech wrestling. Gentlemen, great to be with you today. Again, Chris Coleman, Will Stewart, Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes. Will, great to have Campus Emporium and Southeast Regional Training Center with us here as proud partners and sponsors of the Tech Sideline Podcast.
Right. So first let's address the fact that Fisher Law Firm has dropped off. Nothing sinister or anything there. Jonathan Fisher and I have known each other for a long time, and I know he doesn't want me airing out his private thoughts, but he's just reassessing his law practice and might go in a different direction than what he's been doing. So, we appreciate. He's been a sponsor since 2014, long time. And Campus Emporium goes back, way back. Let's put it this way: when I was making up the ad read for you just now, what we have on our site, it's words written by Campus Emporium, and it says, we've been in business over a decade. Well, they've been in business since 1995. So they've been in business 25 years. When that ad copy was written for us, for our site, yes, it was mid-2000s, and they had been in business for, quote, over a decade, unquote. So I changed it to say 25 years. So that's how long they've been with us. And so they are the title sponsor, not title, but featured sponsor now on the Tech Sideline podcast. And I will say this, go to campusemporium.com. They have free shipping on orders over $12 now through December 13th. And if you go to their website, one thing they're really good about year after year is letting you know what the shipping dates are for you to get your stuff in time for Christmas. So keep an eye on them. Go check out the store and the site and get you some Hokie merchandise.
Chris Coleman, how are you doing on this Thursday afternoon? What's going on in the world of Chris Coleman?
Man, excited to watch the basketball game tonight.
Yeah.
Not so excited to watch the football game this weekend. Odd things to say for Virginia Tech fans, I know, but here we are, 2020.
Well, it's crossover season. That's what we refer to it as when football and men's basketball intertwine. Just how exciting does it get here at Tech Sideline when you've got men's hoops, women's hoops, football, wrestling coming up? What's it like the next couple of months?
I don't think I know I personally didn't handle the transition very well this year. Part of it is that the regular sequence didn't occur. Like the basketball schedule wasn't announced until the season was pretty much ready to start.
Maybe like a week before, yeah.
And football's been all kind of skewed. So fortunately, we've pretty much pulled Jake Lyman in to cover basketball for us, because honestly, Chris and I hadn't really talked about it. And so the very first game they played, I'm already blanking. Who was it against? Radford. That was noon, right?
That was noon on a Wednesday.
I'm going to admit it. It was noon on a Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving. I got up I slept in, man. The football season had been exhausting. I slept in that day till about 11 or 11:30. Got up, looked at my phone, got distracted by some emails, went over to Twitter. It was 20 minutes after 12, afternoon, and the game was underway. And I'd forgotten because I just got up late and got into stuff. So that's kind of what it's been like for me. We're okay. We're in a good spot right now. I'll just leave it at that. We don't need to go on and on about that.
Well, there's a lot of great content on techsideline.com. Read your Inside the Numbers article a couple of days ago. Did you have fun putting that together?
Yeah, much more fun than I had putting together most Inside the Numbers for football this year. Those numbers weren't so good, unless you were talking about like the offensive line.
Christian Darrisaw.
Herbert
Christian Darrisaw has his own section in Inside the Numbers for football.
The sad thing about Darrisaw is like, he's gonna go ahead and declare for the draft after the season, I'm sure. And he's one of the best players to ever play for Virginia Tech, regardless of position. And I feel like a lot of down the road, 10 years from now, not a lot of Tech fans will give him much of a thought, because 2 of his 3 seasons at Virginia Tech will have been losing seasons.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because he's an awesome player.
I was listening to a Jets podcast a couple of days ago. And they were talking about the upcoming draft, because that's what we as Jets fans have to look forward to in the middle of an NFL season.
20-3.
The expert was talking about Christian Darrisaw, brought him up. I mean,
really?
Just one of the top offensive line prospects for the draft. So anyways, he's getting a lot of praise from those that put together mock drafts. And I mean, he could certainly be a very high draft pick. So you guys probably saw this on Twitter. I put a picture on Twitter, I think yesterday or the day before, that I took at a camp in Blacksburg back in 2013, I think, 2014 maybe. And it's a picture of Billy Ray Mitchell's standing with about 8 other guys.
Tyrell Smith's there.
Tyrell Smith is in there. Derek Nottie is in the picture. Derek Nottie was hanging out with guys that day. And so if you look in the picture and you identify everybody, some guys that were on campus that day that were still in high school were Derek Nottie, NFL player. I think Chuck Clark was in one of the pictures, NFL player. And I'm leaving somebody out. There was, Wyatt Teller. I had pictures of Wyatt Teller from that day. NFL player. So it's interesting that these are just high school kids, and years later, man, they've got great careers going in the NFL. I don't know was Chuck Clark still in high school then? Do you know, Chris?
Let's see. His last year at Tech was 2016. So yeah.
Well,
hold on. What month and what year was this? Are we talking about?
That probably would have been summer of 2013.
But he would have enrolled at Tech that later that summer.
So he was. Yeah, he was either
he never redshirted, so
okay, all right. So, and the pictures had James Gale in them, and James Gale and Andrew Matuapawaka.
It was Gale and J.C. Coleman who were always show up to those camps and were great recruiters.
Gale was phenomenal. I've got a picture of Gale yucking it up with Derek Nottie, and you see that picture and you're like, yeah, man, Derek Nottie's coming to Tech, and nope.
Well, we got by the way, a great podcast on Monday. If you're looking for basketball content, we dedicated our entire podcast on Monday, episode 154, talking about the win over Villanova, the hot start for Virginia Tech basketball. If you're looking for a recap of that, go listen to that. On today's show, we're going to talk a lot about number 3 Clemson and Virginia Tech on Saturday night inside of Lane Stadium. How can the Hokies pull off the upset of the Tigers? We'll get to that in just a little bit. But we begin the podcast today talking about some news that came up earlier in the week, and that was Hokies coach Justin Fuente confirming that quarterback Quincy Patterson had entered the transfer portal. Will, Quincy Patterson was somebody who had so much hype coming into Virginia Tech. Elite 11 prospect. Trent Dilfer was someone who really had high aspirations for him and sung his praises. Incredibly hard worker. Of course, the North Carolina game is probably the legacy he'll leave at Virginia Tech. Were you surprised to hear the news about him transferring?
No, it had been rumored, and And so how many years has Quincy been here? Is this his
third year.
Third
I mean,
season?
it's been rumored for a year, basically.
Now, Quincy was at the Elite, and he wasn't in the run-up to the Elite 11. He was in the actual Elite 11 that I think they do out in California. And I think that I believe they ran a four episode series on it. I don't remember what network it was.
It was on the NFL Network.
NFL Network, okay. It's like 4 half-hour shows. And Quincy was kind of one of the guys they featured. Now, granted, there are 11 guys. It's easy to feature all
They had
of
a
them.
camera in the car with him as he's driving around Chicago.
Yeah.
You know, and he had already committed to Tech at that point, and already he was a top-notch representative of the program.
Yeah.
By how he handled himself during all that.
So that's where the famous Trent Dilfer quote came from that I think I retweeted it on Tech Sideline's feed. May have gotten buried since then, but that's where Trent Dilfer, who was working with the Elite 11 quarterbacks, basically said, you're going to play in the NFL someday, and you're going to play in the NFL not because you're a good athlete with a strong arm, but because you're brilliant. And Chris and I spent a lot of time trying to manage expectations with Quincy. And one of the things I noticed early on, first of all, it wasn't hard to figure out that, Quincy was mostly a running quarterback in high school.
Threw 80 passes as a senior.
80 passes as a senior. So I remember counting this. You go look at Quincy's high school film, and it was 42 plays, 21 running plays, and 21 passing plays. And that kind of clued you into where Quincy was as a developmental quarterback. So not surprised by any of that. I think he handled the hype here very well, and he was a very popular guy. I think the first time we ever saw him in a game was at UNC in his redshirt freshman year, right? Remember, he came in and just ran for a first down, and the guys on the sideline freaked out. That was the game that Tech recovered a fumble way down at the end and then drove downfield.
Oh, that would have been his true freshman.
True freshman? Okay.
Yeah.
I think by then they had the 4-game rule in.
I get, yeah.
He redshirted that year. He was able to play in 4
Right,
games,
right.
and that was one of the 4 that he played in.
Mm-hmm.
So, shame to see him go. It'll be interesting to see who picks him up.
Yeah, honestly, it's disappointing because, honestly, it's rare that you have someone with Quincy's natural physical skills and his high level of intelligence all combined together. And I've been harping on Tech's quarterback development recently, and I'm just disappointed that it didn't work out. I know Hooker is blocking him right now, but here's the thing: Quincy has more physical talent than Hooker. I think if he'd been developed properly, he'd be starting.
Yeah.
He was a guy that the fan base, if he had been Virginia Tech's starting quarterback and a good player here, the fan base would have rallied around, and all his teammates like him. So he's one of those guys. If he had been in a leadership position, like I said, this team, in my opinion, has a leadership void. And if Quincy was in a leadership position, which you're not as a backup quarterback, maybe things are a little bit different as far as that is concerned. Because Quincy is a buy-in guy. People. All
you have to do is look at the biceps to see the buy-in.
Right. So
biceps equal buy-in.
Right. So, so people would have followed Quincy, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's just disappointing how it worked out. I think things could have been better, not just at the quarterback position, but maybe in some other things with the program right now if Quincy had been developed as I think he could have been.
And we'll never know.
We'll never know here. Now, maybe it's Quincy. Maybe he just has a mental block to quarterback. We'll just have to see what happens at his next school. But yeah, it's disappointing to me, man. That's all I can say.
So if you look at the guys that have entered the transfer portal, I mean, have any of them, Trayvon Hill played a lot at Miami after he left.
Yeah.
But Trayvon did not get drafted, correct? And did he even sign a free agent contract?
It was originally reported
with
that
Patriots.
But he never made it to camp, apparently.
Yeah.
So it was reported that he had signed with them, and then he didn't actually sign with them. So
you've got Quincy in the portal, and Daryl Simmons also entered in with him, and who else?
Elijah Bowick.
So those guys were all Fuente recruits.
Mm-hmm. I know Simmons was 4-star by at least one service. Bowick was like an upper-level 3-star, but he had like Notre Dame offers and NC State and Georgia and teams like that.
Yeah, like an Isaiah
really
Ford
prolific
situation.
receiver in the city of Charlotte, you know. So, again, disappointing.
So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think Tech's really had anybody enter the portal. And then well, you know, Trayvon McMillian had a good year out at Colorado after he left. So Quincy will be one to watch, and I know everybody's rooting for him. You know, so I'm really hoping he does well at his next stop.
Yeah, really have heard great things about him. Like you guys said, as a teammate, he represented Virginia Tech so well, and I think again, as I said earlier, his legacy that he'll leave behind will certainly be the infamous 6 overtime game against North Carolina. Yeah. I mean, think about Quincy Patterson. Think about when his number's been called in situations where he didn't know his number was going to be called. He delivered.
He did. Honestly,
North Carolina State, North Carolina.
Almost won the Notre Dame game.
Almost won the Notre Dame game.
And you think about it. So, I mean, that's hard. Like you hear coaches talk about that all the time. And as fans, you know, we take it for granted. But if you're the backup quarterback and you don't think you're going to play, like how hard are you really going to prepare? I mean, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, you should do that. You should prepare really hard. But if you're that actual person, it's kind of hard to do it, right? I mean, imagine if, like, you were a backup podcast host and you had to prepare like the starter every week, right? And for, like, 2 straight years, you prepared like the starter and then you never actually got to host the podcast. Wouldn't you be slacking off at some point in there probably? Like, hey, this just isn't going to happen, so why am I going to work hard this week? And then, bam. The podcast host gets sick and you have to come in and you're not prepared because you finally started slacking off. Right?
And then we get into a podcast that goes 2.5 hours long. And
right.
I've got to have a 2-point conversion.
6 overtime.
Right.
Exactly.
You got to pull the right questions off of YouTube.
Yeah. So the fact
you got to stop us when we're talking too much.
The fact that Quincy was able to stay, he was always ready when called on, says a lot about him, I think, and his discipline as a person. So. Yeah, I'll always be disappointed with the way Quincy's career went at Virginia Tech. Not disappointed in Quincy,
right?
But just disappointed in the situation.
Well, think back to that North Carolina game. You think about about that 50-yard rushing touchdown he had in the fourth quarter. And to me, I think the moment of his career will forever be in second overtime, the 4th and 7 touchdown pass that was to Trey Turner, believe it, or was that Hazelton?
That was to Hazelton.
That
the one
just
hand,
beautiful and there was a
pass
flag
interference.
I mean,
too,
that was anyways, that was
I remember the Tech coaching staff saying after the game, you know, that was his go-to pass. That's the pass he throws the best, and I think that's accurate. We saw him throw that pass a few times, and it was always the one he threw the best. Mm-hmm. But I love the run, man. The run is we got some great pictures of that run.
I was in the front row behind the UNC bench for the whole second half of that game. I was my normal season tickets for the first half, but I traded with somebody for the second half. So I went down to sit where she had been sitting, and I was like, whoa, this is like front row seats. Pretty cool. Yeah. So I sat there like probably 40-yard line behind Mac Brown basically the whole time.
Yeah.
And so that Quincy run was right in front of me. And to see all that stuff happen right there on the field, Quincy gave us one of the greatest moments in Virginia Tech history, to be honest.
Right.
So, Thank you, Quincy Patterson. That's all you can say, man. Yeah.
Well, Virginia Tech has an opportunity on Saturday to provide another exciting game in Lane Stadium's history as they host number 3 Clemson. The Clemson Tigers, 1 loss on the season. It came in double overtime against the second-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They were without star quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who will likely be the number 1 overall draft selection in the 2021 NFL Draft. Before we get into Clemson, though, Will, it's been a week and a half since we've really talked Virginia Tech
about
football on the podcast. Hokies are 4-5, and Coach Justin Fuente talked about after the Pittsburgh game just how necessary it was to have a bye week, that the team had been going at it essentially since July. So how much good do you think this bye week did for this program, just to give everyone just a breather after what's been feels like a marathon since July?
Well, I just told you I slept till 11:30 the day before Thanksgiving. I slept a lot that whole 5-day stretch.
I didn't even do a Q&A.
Right.
It's not, like I was just I wasn't physically tired. Like, I'd still go to the gym and have a good workout, but I'm mentally drained, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you know, and we talk about this occasionally. This football is a grind, not just for the coaches and and players, but for everybody peripherally associated with it.
And it was worse this year because we spent the entire offseason not knowing what was going to happen and just talking about just the continuous talking about COVID and football season and should they play. I mean, honestly, I was kind of mentally drained of it before the season even started. I was like almost tired of football before football even started. Yeah. Now, I wanted to play, and I'm still glad they played and everything like that, of course. But at the same time, from the very beginning, I was never fully into it just because of how draining the offseason was.
So, but for me, watching Khalil Herbert run the football a little bit got me into it. But going into that week, there was a ton of rumors, particularly after they got rolled by Pittsburgh. There were a lot of rumors that there were going to be about 10 opt-outs and a handful of guys were going to enter the transfer portal. And so, what we were told is that Quincy cleaned out his locker right after the Pitt game. So that one was pretty definitive. And we were told a couple other players were thinking about it and told that Simmons was thinking about it.
And we were told some guys were going to go home for Thanksgiving and mull their futures.
Right. And one of the heavy rumors was that Darisaw was going to opt out, and he has not.
He said fake news on Twitter when somebody asked him.
So I say this. I don't have any inside knowledge about anything. I just say this. I've been waiting for the not available list for the Clemson game. Mm-hmm. The not available list gets released about an hour before the game. And there in the press box, Pete Morris stands up and reads off the list. And a lot of them are injury. If that list gets a lot larger this week, then some guys have quietly opted out.
Right.
They just haven't put it on Twitter or whatever.
Right. And
I'm not saying that's going to happen. I have no inside knowledge. I got nothing. I'm just saying it's not over until I hear that list on Saturday.
Right, exactly. And it'll be some guys who opted out, and they're going to await events to see what happens right after football season ends. Because if they had entered the transfer portal, that process works. The player goes to the coaches and says, put me in the portal. And I think the coach has 24 or 48 hours to do that.
To do it, yeah.
Right. So when it comes out that Quincy Patterson and Bowick and those guys are in the portal, it's because once they're put in the portal, that becomes public. Like, I think 247 has access to the portal. So they see the names every time it comes up, right? But if you just opt out, like there's no portal. Like, you're not required to release those names.
As long as you don't say anything publicly, nobody knows.
Right, exactly. As long as a guy doesn't announce it on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I do expect we'll see some names on that unavailable list on Saturday that we haven't seen there the last few weeks. And they probably won't be – I mean, some of them are going to be injury-related, like Jermaine Waller and people like that, of course. But any new names that pop up – considering Tech only practiced like twice last week, and I think you can do some math.
The post game questions will be specific.
Yes,
it'll be. Can you tell us about so and so? Is he injured? And we'll see what Fuente says. That's all assuming that there are new names on the list. If it's a name you're used to seeing, then let's go. Let's rock and roll. Everybody's in.
Let's rock and roll and talk about this game on Saturday. So, number 3, Clemson, is a 7:30 kick on ABC inside of Lane Stadium. Again, the lone loss for Clemson was when they were without Trevor Lawrence, who had tested positive for COVID. It was a double overtime loss to Notre Dame, and the Fighting Irish are unbeaten currently right now. Chris, I want to be straight up here. First of all, we're going to go off of the game preview article as we do each and every podcast. It's on techsideline.com, the game preview. Highly encourage everybody to read it. Certainly had a little bit of a different tone to it than previous game previews. Would you like to elaborate on just what it was like putting this game preview together?
I think, I went back and looked at a whole lot of my past previews, and I've been writing game previews for Tech Sideline since 2005.
Since he graduated in 2005?
Yeah.
Or did you write them when you were a student?
No. I don't think I did.
Yeah, he graduated in spring of 2005 and starting in the fall of 2005. That's when he wrote.
Yes, when I started writing game previews.
15 years.
Yeah. And
16 seasons, actually.
There's only just been a few times before where I've picked Virginia Tech to get blown out. But even then, one of those games was like the 2013 Alabama game. I think I picked it like 31-10 Alabama, but I thought it'd be I thought Tech's defense would play well and it'd be a gradual 21-point win for Alabama.
Yeah, that game did not happen the way I thought it would.
Yeah, and I guess I thought I think I picked maybe Miami 31-10 last year. But even then, you felt like, yeah, Tech's not going to win, but this is just one of those weeks where, like, not only do I not think they're going to win, like, I don't even think it's going to be even close. So I've never felt this way before. I don't think I've ever gone into a football game thinking there's no chance Tech is going to win, and I hate to say that, but it's just not likely. I felt better going into the 2013 Alabama game than I do going into this game.
Going into this one. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, because when the schedule came out, I think Hokie fans immediately saw Clemson come to Lane Stadium right before UVA. What a way to end the season. What do you think the morale of the fan base is going into the game against number 3 Clemson?
Well, it's clearly very low. So have you got the preview pulled up? Go down to the bottom and go to the score prediction poll and tell me. And the way we structure these things are, you got 4 choices. Hokies are going to win by 11 plus. Hokies are going to win by 1-10. The opposition's going to win by 1-10, or the opposition's going to win by 11 plus. So what percentage of fans who have voted so far are saying that Clemson's going to win by 11 plus?
Of the 529 votes that are currently on the game preview, 487 of the 529 predict
What
Clemson.
Percentage is that? 95%?
Well, it looks like 92%.
92% of fans voting in the poll think Tech is going to get smoked.
That's got to be a record.
90% have Clemson winning by 11 plus. 2% has Clemson winning by 1-10.
Right.
5% have the Hokies winning by 1-10. And 3% have the Hokies winning by 11
So
plus.
let me tell you about
3%. So how many total people picked Tech to win by double digits?
15 people have picked the Hokies win by double digits.
Let me tell you about these polls that you run. Some percentage of the answers are utter crap, okay? So I was in my buddy Keith Welton's office once, several years ago, and we had the what do you think Tech's record is going to be this year poll preseason posted on the site. And I watched him scroll down and click 12-0 and click vote. There's no way. I don't remember what year that was. There's no way Tech's going 12-0. And Keith's not an idiot. He's a football fan. He knows it. He was just being silly. I think the 3% picking Tech to win by 11 plus are being silly.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry if you're one of them. I don't mean to call you silly, but that's just silly.
Now, well, let me ask you this. So I'm reading this game preview, and certainly, again, a little bit of a different tone from Chris. And we talked about it on Monday, how we were going to attack this podcast today. I want to ask both of you this. Clemson is the favorite. Clemson is a team that very well could win the national championship. We know how good Trevor Lawrence is. We know how good Travis Etienne is. Will, if Virginia Tech were to pull the upset, how will they do it?
I think Chris will probably agree with me on this. Number one, you got to stop the run. And then the other pathway is win the turnover battle, perhaps significantly. And, then the obvious stuff. Don't turn it over much yourself. Don't commit a bunch of dumb penalties and get a few big plays. And Tech's not really a big play offense in the passing game. If they run the right look. So if you look at...
They are in their smoke and mirrors plays.
Well, not only that, but Justin Fuente's always got 1 or 2 trick plays in there. And
remember the trick play against Notre Dame that was called back for an eligible man downfield?
Yep.
It was a great trick play.
I know. You're talking about the one in Lane Stadium, right? That was a huge moment in that game. And you go back to the fake punt, the Mitchell Ludwig fake punt in the 2016 ACC championship game. Fuente will play that card at some point. He has to play that card more than once, and it has to work each time. I think.
The crazy thing is, like, every time he's ever played that card, it's worked, right?
Except, yeah. He's very good at that.
He's very good at it.
Yeah. And he's very good at, as we've talked about on the podcast before, he's very good at picking that moment in a game and turning the game around.
Even when Oscar Bradburn faked that punt against Wake Forest earlier this year, got a little
it
bit
worked.
of momentum.
Now, the drive still bogged down, but like it worked.
No, that's one thing Justin Fuente and his staff are really good at, is picking that spot and running the right play. So that's my take. Stop the run, hit some big plays, win the turnover battle.
Yeah, Notre Dame held Clemson to, I think, 33 rushing yards, and BC pretty much shut down their running game too, and Clemson almost lost that game. So the two teams that either beat them or almost beat them, there was one thing in common. They shut their running game down.
So let me jump in here and say Boston College should have won that game. If Phil Dracovic had kept making the plays he was capable of making, they would have won.
Well, as we know, he doesn't always do that. That's just who he is, right? The other common denominator there is Trevor Lawrence didn't play. Now, their true freshman backup put up some big numbers, no doubt. But
still, they're not going to lose a lot when he becomes their starting
Trevor
quarterback.
Lawrence, man, 70% completion rate.
71 point something.
Future New York Jet.
Thank you for saying it, Chris. We got to find a way to lose out, but thank you for saying it.
Great hair.
I mean, he is a special player, right? So we know he's going, barring the team bus accidentally leaving him in Clemson, he's going to be playing on Saturday.
Did I say that the Elite 11 that Quincy was at, Trevor Lawrence was there also?
There,
So that was my first look at him. I'm
right.
like, man, look at the hair on this kid.
Yeah. And
man.
I don't think people realize that, like, he hadn't been asked to do much running this year, but, like, last year he ran for over 500 yards and averaged 5.5 yards per carry. He averaged more yards per carry last year than Hendon Hooker's averaging this year, and Hendon's averaging like 5.4 yards a carry. He's having a great year running the football.
Yeah.
And Trevor Lawrence was just as efficient running the football last year, which would shock most people. But this guy's a complete player, and he's got the most productive running back in ACC history to hand the ball off to. I mean, it's just loaded Clemson.
What are you going to do?
Remember the semifinal game when Clemson played Ohio State last year, and I don't think a lot of people realized how good of a runner he was. And then he had that ridiculous, I want to say like 70-plus yard rushing touchdown, in which he just beat everybody on the field. Ohio State. I mean, they were like, wow, he actually does have some wheels.
He doesn't have to. But, so yes, stop the run, I think, is a prerequisite. Don't turn the ball over yourself. Probably be at least +2 in the turnover margin.
Mm-hmm.
Generate some kind of big play on special teams, whether that's on a trick play, whether it's blocking a kick, whether it's maybe finally the punt return game gets going with Tavion Robinson or whoever the heck they decide to put back there this week.
Who's the walk-on tight end? They were talking.
He's a wide receiver.
Wide receiver?
I can't pronounce his last name.
Number 47 or 49?
I think it's 49.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think Tech would have to do all things. Basically, Tech has to play their A+ game, and Clemson has to play their C game, and then it might happen.
Let me read just.
Go ahead.
I'll read some numbers real quick just about Trevor Lawrence, because I think everybody knows how good he is, right? Everybody knows he's a household name. But, I mean, some of the numbers are just eye-popping this year. I mean, last year he completes 65% of his passes, 36 touchdowns to 8 picks. This year, as Chris alluded to, 70.6% completion percentage, 19 touchdowns, 2 picks, and he's averaging 9.8 yards an attempt. That's almost a first down every time he throws the football on average.
Every time he drops back, yeah.
So, Will, I was actually going to ask this question because you guys have great perspective on Tech history. I've been excited to ask this question. Can you rank maybe the top 3 or 4 best quarterbacks to have ever played in Lane Stadium?
In Lane Stadium.
Because I think, and I'd love to get the YouTube to chime in here.
Just pure college quarterbacks or famous quarterbacks?
How about famous quarterbacks who played in Lane Stadium? Because I think Trevor Lawrence eventually might be on that list.
Did you see that I actually sort of asked that question on Twitter this morning?
I actually totally missed that.
Okay. So if you go to my Twitter feed, I say, here's a line from our game preview. Trevor Lawrence is the real deal, and he's one of the best quarterbacks any Virginia Tech team has ever faced. Got me to thinking, name great QBs Tech has faced. Aaron Rodgers in 2003 and Brett Favre. Brett Favre played against Tech twice. Not just once, but twice.
Tech beat him one time, right?
Yeah, we lost in 35-13 in 1988 and beat him 20-16 in 1990. I think at least one of those was in Lane Stadium. Aaron Rodgers was in a bowl game. And the obvious answer, of course, is Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's one of the best quarterbacks to ever play in Lane Stadium. So,
any of those old Miami quarterbacks that Tech would have faced, like before 1995.
I believe that Jim Kelly played in Lane Stadium.
Oh, he did. He got knocked out of the game.
That was the game in which he got hurt.
Yeah, Mark Richt replaced him. His backup was Mark Richt.
Yeah.
That's your trivia.
Some of the names coming in. Christopher says Byron Leftwich, Ryan, Donovan McNabb. Those are a couple. Did Donovan McNabb play at Lane Stadium? Assume he did.
Oh, yeah.
He did.
Okay.
Yep,
twice. Yeah. He got smoked twice in Lane Stadium, and then beat Tech twice in the Carrier Dome. It was like the 95 and the 97 games in Lane Stadium were almost identical games, 31-7 and 31-3. And then Tech lost the 2 games in the Carrier Dome against him. One in heartbreaking fashion and one in blowout fashion.
So those are your guys who played in Lane Stadium.
No, as far as like pure college quarterback, you might be able to throw Sam Howell in there one day. But as far as like pure college quarterbacks, like the first guy that comes to mind for me is Ken Dorsey, the 2001 Miami quarterback.
I've never been on his train though, because he never got touched.
He never got touched.
Offensive line was incredible.
Well, so was Trevor Lawrence's.
Yeah, but Trevor's not a beanpole.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, for what Dorsey was at the time, like the numbers he put up for the time
there were some
was
great
just
teams,
insane. Yeah.
So Lawrence has a big arm, and as we just alluded to, he is mobile enough to move out of the pocket and tuck in and run if he needs to. Chris, what's more important for Justin Hamilton's defense on Saturday? Is it to drop as many back in coverage as possible? Is it bringing pressure on him? I mean, what is the best way to try to contain Trevor Lawrence and maybe try to attack him?
I mean, I don't think sitting back playing zone. I don't think that this Tech team is any good at zone. At least not without a spring practice.
Not only that, but many of the passes they throw to Etienne are behind the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. The ones that they throw to, who's their big time receiver?
Amari Rodgers.
Yeah. The ones they throw to Amari Rodgers are really close to the line of scrimmage. If you drop back in zone, they're just going to eat you up.
Then you have to go up and tackle.
Right.
Which Tech is not particularly good at, apparently. Yeah. And I don't know. I would try to get as physical as possible with their receivers and throw off their timing and things like that. I just don't think some kind of zone coverage is going to confuse Trevor Lawrence at all. He's just going to pick it apart. I think the only thing you could possibly do is play really tight physical coverage and try to throw off the timing. I think that's the best way to go about it. Not that would work, but I think it's a better option than just sitting back in zone all day.
Well, it's supposed to be cold and possibly wet, and you never know when a team will come in here and just not play well.
50% chance of rain on Saturday, by the way, in Blacksburg. It's supposed to rain all day Friday as well, so could be one of those wet, cold December days.
But by the same token, Clemson has a lot at stake.
Yeah, this isn't one of those games where they don't really have anything to play for.
Right.
If they lose, they might not make the college football playoff.
Right.
They already have one loss.
Yeah, exactly. Like they have to win out. Oh, by the way, this is new. Total change of subject. The Knight Commission calls for a body separate from the NCAA to oversee FBS football. So it's basically, this is from Twitter. But and this is an official. This is someone who's verified. I have no.
And what is the Knight Commission again? Exactly.
Honestly, don't know. But I've heard people talk about it a lot of times before.
Yeah.
The Knight Commission recommendation number 1: create a new separate entity to govern the sport of FBS football, completely independent of the NCAA, funded by the college football playoff revenues. Governs the sport of football currently operating at the FBS level. Conducts all FBS football operations, including its national championship. Manage all issues related to FBS football athlete education, health, safety, revenue, distribution, litigation, eligibility, and enforcement.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So basically, the NCAA continues on doing what it's doing now, except regulating college football as we know it. They continue to regulate FCS, the NCAA basketball tournament. They just keep their hands off of college football, which honestly is fine with me because they're not doing anything to regulate it right now anyway.
Well, you've wanted a college football czar for years.
Yeah.
A guy who actually runs college football. That wouldn't be a guy. It would probably be an organization.
That's fine. I mean, something. I mean, we've seen this sport go from – it's the most anti-American sport in America as far as the lack of parity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
lack of opportunity for the underprivileged.
I mean, American sports, historically, professionally, the rules are set up the way they are for parity. So the same teams, so the Yankees don't win the World Series every year because they've got so much more money than everybody else, right? So the Cowboys don't win the Super Bowl every year because they've got so much more money.
Evan's looking at his outline for the show, and he's like,
No. I was actually, this is what I do. You finish your thought, and I was going to, it's interesting.
But yet college football has been allowed to to become like a European soccer league, like the French league has been won by the same team for like 10 years in a row.
Wow.
And it's things like that. So I definitely don't like where college football has been trending over the last decade or so, and the NCAA has done nothing about it. And I don't know that like a new committee to take it over would do anything about it. I have no idea, but I don't. The NCAA is clearly not, so why not try something else?
So there are a number of issues with college football, of course, and one of them is that while the college football playoff has been good for money and good for interest to some degree, it's becoming the Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State Invitational, where they play in it every year.
And then pick a random fourth.
They invite somebody to join them. Well, so that creates a giant sucking sound where every decent recruit goes to those three schools. I'm being dramatic here. Clearly, not every decent recruit goes to those three schools. But it also kills interest at the lower level. As recently as 10 years ago, Virginia Tech had a shot at playing for a national championship. In 2011, 9 years ago, Virginia Tech went into that ACC championship game ranked 3rd or 5th or something like that. And there is not a Virginia Tech fan these days who can see a path for, and it's not just a Virginia Tech thing. This is happening to a lot of schools.
2007. Remember the last game? Kansas and Missouri have a big rivalry, right? And at the end of that year, they were like number 2 and number 3 or something like
2007.
that. And I think if Kansas had won that game, then Kansas would have played for the national championship maybe, but Missouri beat them. It was some crazy thing.
If K-State had just beaten Texas A&M one year, they would have played for a national championship.
Right. And
Boise State, if they'd taken care of business, would have played for a national championship.
Yeah, that's just it's just not the same anymore. And quite frankly, I've grown disinterested with the sport because of it. Like I was actually telling my personal trainer this morning, I don't even see like the point of being in the same division as like the Clemsons and Ohio States and things like that.
The same classification.
Same classifications. I know in the 1970s, it was just Division I. There was no FCS or FBS. It was just Division I. And then they did the split between 1A and 1AA. So your Virginia Techs and Florida States of the world went 1A, and your William and Mary's of the world went 1AA.
VMI, Richmond.
I guarantee you that the financial gulf from a percentage standpoint right now is bigger between Virginia Tech and Ohio State than it was between Virginia Tech and William and Mary back in the 1970s when that split happened.
Yeah, Bill Roth has a thing that he tells me and Chris when we talk to him where he says, if you look at the ranking of revenue of the Power 5 schools, Virginia Tech is, there are 65 Power 5 schools, and you can look up revenue for something like 54 of them, or 52 to 54. Those are the ones that report. Mm-hmm. Virginia Tech clocks in at about 40 or 42. And Bill always says Virginia Tech's much closer to being at the bottom than they are being in the top 20.
Correct.
So for Virginia Tech to go from number 42 in revenue to the top 20 would take something like $40 or $50 million more in revenue. But to drop back down to last would take a loss of like $20 million.
Right.
So anyway, and another thing, and this is completely random that those people might be able to fix is, and I'm telling you this is random. You watch the MAC. The MAC is being killed by weekday games. The MAC will go the entire month of November without playing any Saturday games because of television. They play on Tuesday and Wednesday night, and that is slaughtering the fan bases for those schools.
Gosh.
10 years from now, they won't have any fans because nobody will have ever been to see their games. They never will have tailgated.
Right.
So there's a lot of issues facing college. And not only that, but if Alabama commits a violation and Virginia Tech commits a violation, they need to be punished equally, and that does not happen in today's NCAA structure.
Well, they're not punished at all in today's NCAA structure. It's a joke. Every time somebody gets their wrist slap every summer, you always say, they lose a couple scholarships, not allowed this many visits. And here's a $25,000 fine. Like, these rules were made in the decades ago when $25,000 was a lot of money to an athletic department. If you really want to get them to stop cheating, find them $10, $20 million or something like that, right?
Well, you look at what the Big Ten did in their overreaction to the Penn State situation. They fined them $60 million, if I remember correctly.
Right.
That was payable over the course of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years or whatever.
Right.
But they later walked back on that.
Right. Now, if you want to punish Ole Miss for hiring Hugh Freeze and his recruiting scandals and everything like that, then you find them millions of dollars, right? Otherwise, they're just going to do it again.
And you look at the UNC situation, the academic situation. The NCAA basically threw their hands up in the air and said, "Yep, they did something really, really wrong, and there's nothing we can do.
There's nothing we can do about it
because of our stupid rules."
So now I don't know that this new thing would even go that direction. Maybe they go the exact opposite direction and they just say everything's legal. But at any rate, I don't know why the MAC even tries. Why do they stay at 85 scholarships? And I know that to stay at 85 scholarships means they have to play those games in Tuesday, Wednesday night just to get enough TV money to pay for their scholarships thanks to the increased cost of education in this country, right? So they have to do that. Mm-hmm. Why don't they just – I don't know why schools keep up the pretense. Like, why are they even still competing at the FBS level? Why don't they just drop to 63 scholarships, start playing their games on Saturdays so their fans can enjoy it? Because it's not like they have any chance to win the national championship.
All right, let's
talk about Clemson again.
I am actually thoroughly enjoying the conversation. This could be a podcast itself. Thanks for bringing that up, Chris. That is news. We talked about how great Trevor Lawrence has been this year. Completion percentage over 70%. He'll be one of he arguably will win the Heisman this year. So really good quarterback. Travis Etienne, ACC's all-time leading rusher. And again, to harp on the point to wrap up the offense, we could talk about Amari Rodgers being a great receiver. We could talk about their tackles being two of the best tackles in the ACC. But, Will, it seems like the point here for Tech, if they want to slow down Clemson, it's going to have to start with slowing down the rushing attack of Travis Etienne, like Boston College did, like Notre Dame did. Is that fair to say?
Correct. And, it's not like Virginia Tech runs a high-paced offense, but they will also slow the game down offensively. Try to keep it close. It's the classic Frank Beamer thing of how when you have less talent, that's how you do it. Mm-hmm. You shorten the game. It's the equivalent of passing the ball around the perimeter in basketball before the shot clock. So,
well, Virginia Tech's had a lot of success in games this year on offense. Khalil Herbert has statistically proven why he's one of the best running backs in the country. How can he fare against the Clemson Tigers on Saturday? We answer that question next and talk about the Clemson defense. We're going to step aside for a break. When we come back, more Virginia Tech football, and later your questions here on episode 155 of the Tech Sideline podcast, presented by Southeast Regional Training Center and Campus Emporium. Welcome back into episode 155 of the Tech Sideline podcast, presented by Southeast Regional Training Center, Campus Emporium. Great to have you with us as we record on Thursday afternoon, December 3rd. Evan Hughes alongside of Chris Coleman, Will Stewart, and Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes. All right, we just talked about Clemson's prolific offense, but this Tigers defense might be one of the best Brent Venables has had in his tenured time, his long time at Clemson as a defensive coordinator. Look at the Pro Football Focus grades for the Tigers and how they rank in the ACC. Overall, Chris, number one. Mm-hmm. Rushing.
Number one.
Take a guess. Number one.
Number one.
Tackling.
Number four.
Number four.
Yeah.
Pass rush.
Number one.
Number one.
And coverage.
Number
three
one.
Or four?
Number four. Okay,
wow.
so
I
again,
thought they were all number one.
They're the number one overall defense, and they're the number one overall defense in stopping the run.
And this is in the ACC, right? Okay.
Now, I want to read you a couple of numbers because I feel like for Tech to win this game, they're going to have to score some points on offense.
I would agree with that statement. I think it's extremely fair to say.
The Tigers, these are the opponents this year that they've played and what they have held them to on the ground. Wake, 37 yards rushing. The Citadel, 86 yards rushing. UVA, 147. Miami, 89 yards. Georgia Tech, 123 yards. Syracuse, 150 yards. Boston College, 67 yards. Notre Dame ran for over 200 yards against
Notre
Clemson.
Dame might be the real deal.
Notre Dame's good, yeah.
But then how did Brent Venables' defense bounce back after surrendering 200 yards rushing against Pittsburgh? They allowed the Panthers to 16 yards
That's
rushing.
Pitt, though.
So, Will, it feels like Khalil Herbert's going to have somewhat of a big game for the Hokies to compete with the Tigers. And the offensive line, that Tech offense, the rushing attack, they're going to have their hands full. There's no question.
Yeah, I don't know what you do about that. The one thing you haven't mentioned is that in the ACC, the 3 starting linebackers for Clemson are ranked as the top 3 linebackers by PFF in the entire ACC. So if you got 3 starting linebackers for 15 teams, that's 45 linebackers, and the Clemson linebackers are 1, 2, 3. And we've run into a situation this year where you take Miami, for example. Miami had some really good defensive ends, bad linebacker play.
Right.
And we have not run into a defense that is this complete at the front
that has
7.
no weakness. Right.
Yeah,
really.
and also in the 4 on the back end too.
Pitt maybe.
Yeah, Pitt's pretty darn good.
Not quite Clemson good, of course, but they're still pretty darn good.
So I don't know. I don't know what Tech can unlock, what key they can use to unlock and get the running game going again. I'm still, even though they said Khalil Herbert was 100% against Pitt, I'm still not convinced. His burst, his speed wasn't there. So it'll have to be there against Clemson, and somehow I think he's a guy that can make people miss when he's 100% healthy. So,
Chris, I typically ask this question a lot, and I'll ask it again. For Virginia Tech's offense, give me one player that has to play well besides Hendon Hooker for the Hokies to hang in there with Clemson and potentially upset the Tigers.
I would definitely say Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have balance. Notre Dame beat Clemson because they were balanced. Boston College was in the game because they were throwing the ball, but they could never establish a running game. And they lost that game by 6. If they could have just had a little bit of balance, they probably would have won. So balance is going to be key. I don't know why. Now, granted, this is Pitt's game plan against everybody, but against Virginia Tech, it just seems like just man up on the outside, play physical against Tech's receivers, and shut down the run.
Let the front 7 do their thing.
Yeah. I mean, Tech's offensive line is really, really, really good. Generally, when they fail, it's because of a numbers advantage on the defense. But like they didn't look like they had a good game against Pitt, but there was always 1 or 2 extra guys than they would normally face with the Pitt defense because Pitt just didn't respect the passing game, and they shouldn't because it's not good. So, I think Tech. This is a game. Yeah, they have to be balanced. I think they have to go out and show they can throw the ball early to have a chance to run the ball, in which case they can be balanced. I don't think they can go out there and start running Khalil Herbert, because I think if Clemson's smart, that's going to be their number one plan, is to take him out of the game early on. So I think Tech needs to actually come out throwing in this game. If they don't show that they can throw the football early in the game, then I don't think they have any chance in the world to move the football consistently.
And I don't mean throwing it 50 yards down the field on first down.
Correct. We mean the thing that they cannot do, or they have not been able to do all year, a traditional passing game.
Yeah.
So, and that was the thing. Like I said, going into the bye week, there were a couple different ways you could approach it. You could take most of the time off, get bodies healed up and everything like that. Or you could really attack it and make up for lost time in the sprint that you lacked because of no spring practice. So whatever development Hendon Hooker was going to make in the spring that he couldn't make, we'll try to get some of that in right now. And they chose to get healthy instead. And
well, Thanksgiving messed things up. Kids went home.
Don't let them go home. It's big-time college football.
All right.
You never let them go home. They always play in UVA this week anyway, right?
Solid point.
Sorry. You don't let it. I mean, if you've got a bowl game right after Christmas, you don't go home for Christmas.
Well, this could mushroom into a whole buy-in discussion where,
correct.
They lost 47-14 to Pitt.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, look. Here, I'm saying, all right, I'm not saying they made the wrong decision because I think whatever decision.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think whatever decision they made wasn't going to lead to them beating Clemson. I'm more worried about whether they beat UVA or not. Quite frankly, like this team's been so up and down all year. One week they play well, one week they play bad. Most of the games they're just kind of mediocre, to be honest with you. But like, let's say they have one really good game left in them. Which one would you rather it be? The Clemson game or the UVA game? I would pick the UVA game because a really good game against UVA probably wins the game. But a really good game against Clemson still probably doesn't win it because Clemson's so good. I mean, if you just think how good Clemson is offensively, like that Pitt defense is good.
Yeah, it's a great
and Clemson
defense.
Just went out and shredded them like they were.
Well,
nothing.
they had 31 points in the first quarter.
Yeah, like they were nothing. Like I was saying, you have to be able to throw the ball to beat Pitt, and Tech obviously couldn't do it. And you got to be able to throw the ball to have a chance to beat Clemson too.
Yeah,
that's what I feel like. Herbert is the obvious answer, and I should pick that. If I could go 1 and maybe like 1B, I feel like James Mitchell has to be a vital part of this offense on Saturday for Virginia Tech. Will, to me, he feels like he is that safety blanket for Hendon Hooker in the passing game. He's missed a couple of games due to injury. Hopefully he's back on Saturday, but to me, he's that extra element in the passing game that Hooker needs.
It's a legit question how healthy he is. I think James is a guy that you're going to find out at the end of the season, hopefully not before then, that he's really been playing hurt.
He got hurt in that Liberty game. Or not Liberty, Louisville.
Yeah.
He came back in to recover the onside kicks, but he had gotten hurt earlier in that game and had come up limping and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's been pretty banged up.
Well,
so it's not like he's going to go out and catch 8 or 10 passes and have 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. I just don't think he's healthy enough. I'd love to be wrong.
That's the perfect insight right there from Will Stewart and Chris Coleman. Absolutely love it. That's the beauty of the podcast. Okay, all right. Let's transition here. Let's get into some predictions, and then we're gonna have some time to get into your questions on YouTube Live, and I've got a couple on Twitter. Is this the best team Virginia Tech has faced since Ohio State in 2015?
Did Ohio State end up winning the title in 2015?
They did not. They won it the year
prior.
prior.
They won the year before.
When Tech beat them in Columbus. This is the
right.
team.
Wasn't that the Deshaun Watson year that Clemson won in 2015?
I believe it was 16.
16.
I think they lost to Alabama.
Because we almost beat them in 16.
They lost in 15 to Alabama. They beat Alabama in 16.
Right.
They lost in the semis in 17. With
Here we go again about all the national championships. Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State, right? No parity.
Yeah, that's all I mentioned.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about it. There are a couple teams that you can bring up. You can look at the Clemson team that Virginia Tech played in the ACC championship game in 2016. That was without Deshaun Watson. That was with Kelly Bryant.
No, that was 2017 with Kelly Bryant. 2016 was Deshaun Watson. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Not the 2017 team because Kelly Bryant wasn't that good of a quarterback.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame in 2018 was a good team, but not that good.
Right.
Not as good as they are this year. Maybe the 2016 Clemson team.
No, it had Deshaun Watson, like you were saying.
Yeah.
I would say since that team. You could make an argument 14 Ohio State, 15 Ohio State, or 16 Clemson, in my opinion. 17 Clemson was really, really good everywhere except Kelly Bryant's not like he was a bad quarterback. Like, Kelly Bryant was pretty much going to win every game on their schedule except for Alabama.
And that's exactly what happened.
So that's why they benched him for Trevor Lawrence when Lawrence was a true freshman. Lawrence could beat Alabama.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
Well, here are the final thoughts section of Chris's preview. He says, I don't know if I've ever picked the Hokies to get blown out before, at least not as badly as I'm about to do so in this article. I went through a lot of our game previews, and here are a couple you came up with. In 2012, you picked Florida State to beat Virginia Tech 34-6. In 2013, you picked Alabama 31-7, and last year you picked Miami 31-10. Chris, what is your prediction for this game?
Oh gosh, I think I picked it 47-17. Yeah, I guess I'm a glutton for punishment, spending part of my afternoon researching games that I thought Virginia Tech was going to lose badly. That's not fun, but I just don't see it, man. I think Lawrence is. I actually don't think Clemson is quite as good overall as they normally are. I think they're really, really good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're quite as good across the board as they were 2, 3, 4 years ago. But I think Lawrence is so good that you don't notice it, really. You don't notice it as much. And I just... Have you seen any evidence at all from Virginia Tech this year that they have any hope of slowing down Trevor Lawrence? I can't imagine it happening. And I just don't think Tech is balanced enough offensively. I think they'll probably make a few plays offensively that'll impress you here and there, but I just don't know that they'll be able to consistently move the ball. I think, the final scores, I think I'm picking somewhere right around what the Pitt game was, but the Pitt game was like a slow death. Tech was very much in that game halfway through the third quarter, right? I don't think it's going to be that way this time. I think Clemson's going to get control early, and the second half is just going to be like a running the clock out type deal.
So I don't know that I've ever picked Tech to lose by more than about 20 points. Although I picked 35-10 in the Alabama game in 2013.
You took UCLA to beat Tech in the 2013 Sun Bowl, 30-13. UCLA won 42-12.
Yeah. So for me to go with 56-17, that's almost 40 points. That's 14 points, 2 touchdowns higher. So if you go back to 2013, I picked the eventual national champion Alabama Crimson Tide. I think they won that year. Hard to keep track, isn't it?
They did.
I picked them to beat Tech 35-10, and I'm going with this Clemson team to beat Tech by 2 more touchdowns than that.
No.
But I thought, man, I think Clemson's going to roll Tech. I'm like, well, don't be a wimp, man. Pick it. Just pick it big time, 56-17.
I'll tell you a story when Clemson played the Citadel this year. And, I didn't actually look this up to confirm it, but it's what somebody called me and told me, and he's in a position where he would know. And it sounds about right. Clemson's beating the Citadel 49-0 earlier this year. And they asked the Citadel coach if he wanted to, shorten the quarters or play with a running clock in the second half. And he said, no. We came here to play 60 minutes of football. 49-0 Clemson at halftime, right? Well, Dabo respected that. And Clemson beat them 49-0. That was the score at the end of the game. Clemson chose not to score in the second half. Dabo likes Justin Fuente. He almost hired him as their offensive coordinator at one point when he hired Chad Morris. Yeah. So, I don't think you could also kind of make the argument maybe that the Citadel might tackle better. Which is sad to say. I don't know.
I don't know, dude.
I don't know. But we're splitting hairs at this point. Is Tech going to allow 47 points or 56 points is basically what we're arguing about.
So Clemson's only gone over 50 twice against ACC teams. They beat Georgia Tech 73-7, and they beat Pitt 52-17. So I'm just looking for a little bit worse beating than what they gave Pitt. Score a touchdown instead of kicking a field goal at some point.
Let's go ahead and dive into some YouTube Live questions, shall we? We're about an hour and 7 minutes into the podcast. Let me go ahead to the top. Let's see. Question from Luke Hamley about wrestling. Are you guys going to cover wrestling more this season? Just asking since the schedule was released today. I did not realize it was released today.
Okay.
How about that? I'll go look it up right now. That's absolutely. I think we will be covering. We'll be bringing them up on the podcast.
We have to come up with a plan because I was going to have Jake cover wrestling for us, and now we got Jake covering basketball. That doesn't mean he can't do both to some degree.
Jake is so prolific. Like yesterday, I asked him if he wanted to write a VMI preview, and an hour and a half later, he had finished a VMI preview.
Jake Lyman's a stud.
He is.
But he's also doing Tech Talk live notes for us. So anyway, we'll get that figured out. I felt like, and a lot of people who follow our site follow wrestling a lot more closely than I personally do. I felt like last year was just kind of Virginia Tech biding their time. Tony Roby's been doing a really good job recruiting, but I think I felt like with Mekhi Lewis taking time out to train and not wrestling last year, I just felt like last year was just kind of, I think Tech's going to be good, but really it's this year and the coming years where things are really going to start to bear fruit. So I'm not answering the question. I'm kind of caught off guard, but I'm glad the schedule's finally released. We'll take a look at it.
Absolutely.
So, all right, Mekhi Lewis redshirted his first year, right?
Yes.
And then he took an Olympic red shirt last year, right? And this year doesn't count for anybody, right? Mekhi Lewis could potentially be like a 7th-year senior for.
He could wrestle till he's 25 years old.
He could. I'm telling you, man. But yes, I would. You know a lot more about it than me, but like, I like the fact that dude's like a redshirt sophomore, but yet is still like he's not all that experienced a wrestler because he's only competitively.
Although the redshirt guys, they do wrestle.
They do wrestle in other events that don't count. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The unattached stuff, but
which is still a great experience, and get to wrestle against other unattached wrestlers from other
schools.
It does seem like that. This kind of seems to be like this could be. It's always a good year for Virginia Tech wrestling, but it seems like it could be even better this year.
So one of the things I'll be looking for in the coming 3 to 5 years is, and Tony Roby might smack me for hearing me say this, I think the first step for Virginia Tech wrestling is to dominate the ACC. And by dominate, I mean win it 3 or 4 out of the next 5 years.
Well,
I'll tell you what.
Establish dominance in this conference and then really start thinking about.
You got NC State, who's a top 5 program, Pitt's top 10, Tech's top 10. ACC is just unreal.
Here's what's difficult recruiting against NC State right now because of that stupid North Carolina state law. NC State can recruit wrestlers from Pennsylvania and Ohio or wherever and count them towards in-state tuition.
Right.
So it's less of a financial burden on those kids to go to NC State than it is to Virginia Tech. So that's a big recruiting disadvantage.
And these guys are on partial scholarships.
Right.
They're not on full scholarships.
If they were all on full
like
scholarships, it wouldn't matter. But for anything besides football or the 2 basketballs, it's partial scholarships. So they're paying their own way partially. And if they go to NC State, it's less money they have to pay. So that state law in the state of North Carolina that we've been talking about with regards to UNC football and saving money, but it actually helps sports like NC State wrestling, NC State baseball, which is really good. All those things that the Carolina schools are good at. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
And I remember talking to Tony Roby one time, and Tony he said to me, NC State gives a lot of institutional support, which tells me they're getting, I don't know, academic grants or something like that. It's a tough road to hoe. But anyway, take control of the ACC, and then that's when I'll really start thinking about a team national championship.
All right, so we've got a bunch of questions to get in about 9 minutes. So rapid fire here, okay? Here we go. First one, Michael Watson, did the no spring practice hurt Quincy more than any other player on the team this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the original questions we got is, like back when COVID hit and spring got canceled, I think one of the questions we got is which quarterback will this help the most? Will this favor the most? And
Hendon.
My answer at the time was Hendon because, Hendon needed to develop, of course, but at the same time, the coaches knew who Hendon was. And, the other 2 quarterbacks, Braxton Burmeister had never been in the system before. He definitely needed the spring, and he didn't get it. And Quincy is such a raw player. He needs as much development time as he can get, and he didn't get it. So, yeah, I mean, I would agree that the lack of spring hurt Quincy. At least I guess it hurt Quincy. I mean, Tech's quarterbacks really haven't been developing under Cornelsen anyway. So,
Understood.
A question from JPCVT. What should Tech fans make of Whit's silence on how the 2020 season has gone? Whit has been quick to address football concerns in the past. I believe he said something after the 2019 Duke game about the results not being acceptable, and he handled the media regarding Fuente's dalliance with Baylor, etc.
So he made a comment after the Duke game last year, but that was made in a private setting and then leaked out. I don't remember him making a public statement.
Correct.
And the Baylor thing he dealt with afterwards. So I'm actually going to – I've been critical of Whit for not communicating more with the fan base on a more regular basis. That's a general statement I always make. And that's kind of a Virginia Tech issue in general. But in this particular situation, I'm going to be in his corner because I despise when athletic directors come out and say, so-and-so is our coach and he has our full support, and then they fire him 6 weeks later.
Well, it's just like a coach who said, I'm not interested in leaving, and 2 days later he takes another job.
That's a load of crap. Just keep your mouth shut.
Just like anything you can say right now
it's just going to make people mad.
It's not going to be worth spit in the wind. Exactly. Like, yeah, then you could come out with a statement saying this isn't good enough for Virginia Tech football, and we're going to fix it at the end of the season. Blah blah blah. And then people are going to be like, okay, well, how are you going to fix it? And it's just going to get accompanied by Fire Fuente hashtag
Fire Fuente, hashtag Fire Fuente.
All of them on Twitter, you know. So, or if you come out and say, Justin Fuente is our football coach, no matter what, blah, blah, blah. And then people are going to be all over you for that.
Well, then you're not getting my money.
Right, exactly. So I don't think there's anything you can say during the season.
So I don't make anything of it to answer the question.
I don't make anything of it at this point. You rarely see statements that actually mean anything get made during the course of the season. Yeah.
Question from one of Malcolm's fraternity brothers that I was given in the middle of the break as I pull out my phone. Will is his name, right, Malcolm? Right. Will. He writes, okay, so the talent gap between Virginia Tech and Clemson is huge. If the talent gap wasn't there and Virginia Tech recruited just like them, would Clemson still be better than Virginia Tech because of their ability to develop players for the NFL?
Man, that's a loaded question.
I like that question. Sometimes you can't tell, like sometimes you think you have a talent problem. But is it really a talent problem, or is it a player development problem? Like, some people would look and say the Hokies have a talent problem. I would agree in certain spots that they could do better, of course. But, like, I think they could be more talented for sure, like defensive tackle for the scheme and things like that. But I look at a guy like, and obviously, like, losing Farley to opt out, they could be more talented at corner because that hurt. But when I look, like, I think Alan Tisdale is an NFL player or has NFL talent. NFL potential. But he's only 210 pounds.
Right.
If Alan Tisdale played at Clemson, would he be 230 pounds right now? I think player development on the offensive line is excellent. Like, there's at least, all right, both tackles are going to play in the NFL. I figured Nestor probably will at some point. I mean, 3 or 4 of these current guys could end up in the NFL one day of Tech starting offensive linemen, which is an extremely high percentage for one group of starters.
Yeah, it really is.
That's like 1996 Virginia Tech offensive line in terms of talent. Those guys have buy-in, and they're well coached, and they've been developed, right? So, like, if there was as much buy-in amongst Tech's linebackers as a group, because Dax is clearly bought in, right? But I'm saying as a group, would we be sitting there seeing a 230-pound Tisdale and you just have a completely different view of things, right?
In a general sense, let me answer it this way: the Clemson program, particularly now, is to the point where they have much more support and infrastructure. And I'm not talking about their buildings. I'm talking about the number of support people and analysts and such that they have. And, like, what if every football player on your team got his own coach? That's an extreme example. That would mean that you have 85 guys, each individually coaching players. It's not that extreme, but Clemson does have more. So they're able to provide more personal attention and development for each individual player simply because their operation is larger and better staffed. So the answer to the question is kind of yes. If the two teams are basically equal and one of them has more support and staffing, they're going to tend to be the superior team.
Right. Or the more developed
on
team
game day, the more developed team.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I would pretty much agree with that. Not to suggest that Tech is talented as Clemson, because that's nowhere close to being true. But sometimes it's hard to tell how talented a team is.
Guys in a smaller system might flounder more than they do in a larger system.
Right.
Interesting question. Okay, 2 fun ones. Let's close with some fun.
Okay.
Jersey Hokie 29. By the way, one of my favorite Twitter accounts. Do you follow Jersey Hokie 29?
Yep.
But he is
good.
Big supporter of Tech wrestling.
I don't know that I follow him, but I see his
right.
stuff all the time.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. He writes, if Will and Chris could bring back one past Hokie player, not named Michael Vick or Bruce Smith, and start them against Clemson, who would they want and why? Assume past player is at their college performance level, pro improvement not factored in.
Sure. Okay, so peak college. My answer would certainly be Tyrod.
Oh, man, he beat me to the
answer. Okay, well, and I'll give my reasoning for that. Like, yes, I would love to have Tim Settle against Clemson, or I would love to have Brandon Flowers locking down one side of the field. I think Brandon Flowers is the best cornerback in Virginia Tech history. He can make a huge difference in a game like this. But ultimately, I don't think one defensive player, if you throw into this game, one pass tech defensive player would flip the scales at all.
So then you got to go to offense.
So you have to go to offense, and what's the one position where one player can make the biggest difference, and that's quarterback. And if you put Tyrod at quarterback, and this is no slight to Hendon Hooker, but if you put Tyrod at quarterback and everything else went well, you got a couple turnovers out of Clemson, special teams went well, and Tyrod had a peak Tyrod game. If Tyrod has like a 2010 Florida State ACC championship game type game, then you could potentially pull it off. So that I picked Tyrod because he's the best player not named Michael Vick at quarterback, and like one defensive player isn't going to make a difference. So not even like a wide receiver would make a difference because the wide receiver needs someone to throw them the ball. Like Andre Davis wouldn't do you much good in this game.
Jaden Payett wouldn't do you much good in this game. So for me, agree with all that. Just think about what a difference Gerard Evans made in the 2016 ACC championship game. He kind of picked that team up on his back there for a while in that game. Not to take away from what the other guys did. My first thought was Ryan Williams, and then I went to Tyrod for the reasons that Chris listed.
I think that I don't know. I'm tempted to go this. I'm going to pick Eddie Royal. I don't know why. Punt return, I think, like you said, if Tech could get something going in special teams and Eddie Royal back there.
Now, this coaching staff could use him in the slot the way he should have been used.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely true.
And you put Eddie Royal next to Trey Turner. I don't know why. That's the name that jumped out to me was Eddie Royal. So, okay, last one from Sean D. Taylor, piggybacking off of Jersey Hokie 29's question. Similar question, but one Hokie family in the same scenario. What Hokie family tandem would you pick if you could start them against Clemson, i.e. Fullers, Edmonds, the Chungs, Vicks? Who would you pick?
Oh, boy.
Well, I feel like the Vicks might be super, I mean, of course, because you get Michael there. But, I mean, think about it. What tandem of family would you use?
Gosh, you need so much to beat Clemson, so I can only pick one family. The outside pick, I would really love to, this is going to sound really, really weird, and it's going to be a pick that nobody else would pick. But I think for Virginia Tech to win this game, they have to stop Clemson's running game, right?
You're going to pick the Martins.
I wasn't going to pick the Martins.
Orion Martin and Cam Martin.
Nah, because, Tech already has a couple good defensive
Sorry to
ends.
interrupt. Go ahead.
Shamari Connor's good enough to help in the running game at Whip, which is where Cam Martin played. I'm going to pick the Lewis brothers, your defensive tackle. Get Big John Lewis in there at 310 pounds. Do your best to make Clemson one-dimensional. For this particular matchup, I would pick the Lewis brothers, Jonathan and Kevin Lewis. Any other? Just randomly, generally speaking, I would probably pick the Edmonds brothers or the Fullers. You can't go wrong with
I would go with the Fullers because you'd get
too.
a corner, you'd get an NFL quality linebacker, and you'd get a receiver that could help. How much? I don't know.
Hold on. Linebacker?
I'm thinking the Edmonds.
Yeah. You just picked two corners and a wide receiver.
So you get Kendall and Kyle, who are Pro Bowl level corners.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So I was thinking about the Edmonds at first, and I transitioned to the Fullers, and that's how my brain got it mixed up.
Right. I mean, it's a tough choice because
see, if the Edmonds had a wide receiver brother, then that's who I'd go with.
Right.
Those were two really fun questions. I appreciated the thought, and I'm gonna have to put more questions on Twitter now to get those.
What about two groups of brothers? Because then you could pick the Lewises and the Fullers.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Gentlemen, it's amazing how when we first started doing the Tech Sideline podcast, the first one we ever did, the three of us, was like 45 minutes, and then it was like, all right, we got to cap it in an hour, and now an hour and 22 minutes just flies by.
And it's not because we're taking questions, which we didn't do back then. We're going well over an hour before we even get to the questions.
So thank you to both of you for staying a little bit extra today on the show, episode 155. My final question on each and every show is for Chris Coleman, CC. Basketball game tonight against VMI. Will we have coverage on TSL?
Yeah. Jake will be writing the recap of that.
Awesome.
So yes,
that game is on ACC Network.
ACC Network at 8:00.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so the men's are undefeated, and the women are undefeated as well, coming off a big 40-point plus win over George Washington the other day. So,
how good is George Washington though?
they were unbeaten. They had a couple of pieces inside, but Tech made 16 threes, which tied a Castle Coliseum record, 2 away from the program record. Tell you, Tech women's basketball folks, they're legit. They've got 2 really good interior players this year, Asia Jones and Liz Kitley, kick out and shoot the 3 ball.
Where's Jones from?
She's a transfer from Southern California.
No one will ever accuse Whit Babcock of not being able to hire basketball coaches.
That is correct.
So, all right, well, that'll just about wrap things up. Episode 155 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
None whatsoever. I'm really excited about
Can we get to the next week, please? It's pretty much what I'm thinking.
Well, we will be back on Monday morning to talk about Virginia Tech football, the recap of the Clemson game, and we'll talk a little bit about Hokie hoops and what Will and Chris saw from tonight's game against Virginia Military Institute.
Yeah, because Tech does not play this weekend.
They do not. The next game for Tech men's basketball after Thursday's game is Tuesday in the ACC Big Ten Challenge against Penn State. So that'll do it for us. Thanks so much to everybody for the great questions. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Episode 155 of the Tech Sideline podcast. For our managing editor, Chris Coleman, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, the best podcast producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart. I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes. Thanks so long. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy the game this weekend.